Hello and welcome back to Verbose Mode by TaxCare, coming to you live from Shift 2025 in wonderful Zadar, Croatia. Last but definitely not least, my last guest for this Verbose Mode series of interviews is Olya. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. And last but definitely not least, topic of conversation will be decision making. I love it because it's so much to unpack.
Precisely, and I think that's one of the most overlooked skills when it comes to leadership, startups, and just running
management.
Exactly.
Life.
Yeah, it's actually why I became very passionate about it is because I've been head of growth for other startups, mostly tech startups, for the last 8 years, and I've seen brilliant people make horrible decisions and don't question themselves in the moment or post factum. So I've definitely been traumatized by horrible decision-making hygiene of other people. And that's what actually made me go out on my own afterwards. And I'm now coaching on the topic, both startups and bigger executive teams. And I do have my podcast as well. It's called Decision Factory.
Decision Factory.
I love your hat,
yes,
because it reminds me of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Exactly. Here we go. Decision Factory, folks, tune to that. It's important. I would say, I think there are two main questions need to be asked. Why people make bad decisions and how can we get better?
So, two really good questions, two very essential questions. I think the fact that people make bad decisions is super easy. They just don't even realize they're making one, because most of us as humans are just sleepwalking through and like milliards of decisions every single day. And it's okay, because most of them do not actually have any serious consequences, like what t-shirt to put on, you name it, what to eat for breakfast, etc. But when it comes to executive decision making, when that decision affects your company and people working for you, this is where stakes are a lot higher. But unfortunately, again, I think the stat goes as 90% of leadership is not making conscious decisions. So only 10% of people actually slow down and say, okay, this is not a task, it's a decision. It's not a fire that I need to put out, it's a decision that I need to make that is going to have consequences. And I basically came up with a framework that's called decision fitness, because I realized that it's like any sport or any muscle that needs to be trained. And there are several
steps. If you do it wrong, do it more.
Exactly, but most people don't, like a lot of people don't work out, A lot of founders don't work out, and they don't work on their decision muscle either. And that's why it's like you cannot get fit if you're not making an effort for it.
I have another question. I think that once we realize that it's an important decision, it's not getting any better, because now we are terrified by the weight of this decision. So maybe it's better not to even notice and just go along.
I think the reason why we get terrified is because we don't know what steps we should take in order for it to have the best possible outcome, right? And again, just like working out, you can come to the gym, but you wouldn't know what to do with most of the machines if nobody shows you. Or you can try, but you can also get hurt, right? Because there is only a certain way to do it. And but the ridiculous thing is, it's actually very easy. It's only like a 3-step process. Once you realize you're in the decision, like the very serious decision, one is you just really need to be able to spot biases that you have. It could be a bias towards a person, a concept, an idea, a data point, for example. And it's actually the hardest piece of the process, because you actually have to, learn about it before you're able to spot it. Second step is you actually just project outcomes. You look at the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and the middle, which is probably going to be your most likely scenario. And you actually look at the results of it and try to project and prepare a plan for each of the outcomes. And the last step is what most people don't do at all, is retrospective. Once the decision pans out, you go back to what you projected the result and you compare the outcome with the result, and you see what you could do better next time.
I think the third one, although it's mostly overlooked, is the easiest one to implement. The first two sound very simple but also very, very hard to do.
Yeah, they actually require theory. Like they require theoretical knowledge. Like you actually have to learn about it. Like you can do it yourself, or you can employ a coach, or you can. I mean, there are tools for it now. I have a tool, obviously. It's just it's like I said, it's just putting in reps. Just like in the gym. That's why it wasn't even me who came up with the concept. It was founders that I was coaching, and they were telling me, we feel like we're coming to this like fitness session with you. It's like decision fitness. I was like,
That's
yes,
that's exactly that. Yeah.
sold to the highest bidder. Decision fitness it is.
Okay. All right. So how do we train? What do we do? So we make decisions every day, and then sometimes we do realize, okay, that's an important decision. Let's do something conscientious and really unpack it and try to see our biases. We probably won't be able to, right?
Yeah, it's like you have to know the biases in order to recognize them. There are most of the people fall into one of the two traps. The first trap is what I call basically confusing correlation with causation. So basically assigning, like thinking that something drove to the outcome, whereas it had nothing to do with it really. And an easy way to overcome that is to basically keep a log of your decisions, actually. Just basically, okay, this is what we did in the last, say, 90 days, and then being able to come back to it and say, okay, actually a price change is what influenced pickup in revenue growth right now. It wasn't a TechCrunch article that came out a week ago. So as long as you keep the memoir, the log, whatever you want to call it, you can always go back to it and see if your thinking is actually aligned. And then the second most important step in that process is also running the opposite scenario. Like say, okay, let's imagine the event that I think moved the needle did not happen. Would I still have the same result? Mm-hmm. So these two steps are very important. And then the second trap, cognitive trap, is confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. Again, like I said, most people fall victim of it. It's when you already made a decision, actually, or you create a narrative and you're just looking for evidence to support it. That one is also quite actually easy to break once you become aware of it. It's basically looking for evidence that doesn't support your decision or your narrative. And most of the time you would actually find that evidence. And if you already have a team around you, it's actually asking for somebody to be the devil's advocate. But make sure you don't ask the same person to do it all the time, because then again, you fall into the same loop. So it's basically assigning, I call it red team or devil's advocate, somebody who can do this like mental sparring with you and maybe help you uncover that bias.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, and then once we kind of strip down those biases, so I'll tell you what I'm thinking, that in the end of the day, maybe we also do not want to get rid of our biases.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So especially the causation correlation one, which proves that we do the right thing, that our expertise is relevant, what we know about the world is correct. Those are very, very hard to overcome. And even if I make an effort to do that, sometimes I won't be able to, just because some beliefs are ingrained too deep to be actually rooted out for each and every decision that I need to make.
I think it's a super relevant statement, and I think a lot of people will definitely recognize themselves hearing that. And what I usually say to that is that you cannot grow a business without growing yourself, and growth is usually painful. And one super easy like anatomy example from it would be teeth. You know, when a baby is growing teeth, it's very painful, but that's what needs to happen for you to be able to chew and stop, drinking milk. So growth is painful, and if you're feeling comfortable, that means you're not growing. And it's okay, maybe you already reached some certain level of, enlightenment and all that, and maybe that's where you want to stay. But growth is not a destination, it's a continuous process. So you can always get better, you can always learn new things, and I think it's a conscious choice that you need to make every day.
Yeah, that's it makes sense. That's insightful, and don't know how if there are a lot of people that are willing to do that, but I guess that's part of what needs to be done. Any practical advice, maybe especially on the retrospective part? When do we decide that we already know enough of the outcome of our decision so it makes sense to make a retrospect? You gave an example of changing the price and then seeing how it actually did. You know what? You raise the price, the revenue goes down, and yes, you probably should do the retrospect, but you know what? Let's wait a little bit longer. Maybe it will pick up, and then my decision will pan out as a correct one.
It's a very tough question because the timeline, retrospective timeline is super important. And obviously, this is where vertical expertise is required. And if you already have a team, probably to rely on them. If you have your finance guy, your marketing guy, your sales guy, these are the people who will be able to tell you, you know what, Olya, actually we need to wait 2 months in order to see if this is moving in the right direction or this is just noise, because there is a lot of noise in the data. Or obviously, I mean, you can Google things nowadays. All the best practices are out there, and if you're just the one man or one woman show, you just have to figure out how long it should take. But do not. This is where you need to have patience, because sometimes you need to wait a little longer, and maybe things will get even more painful. And this cliche phrase, it's always the darkest before the dawn. So sometimes you have to get through the most painful part before you see the result.
So, okay, can we maybe redo our retrospective once things change and still correlated to the same decision? Is it something that worth doing, reviewing, looking back at the decision not once but multiple times?
I absolutely think so, yeah, because every time you'll probably see things that you have overlooked before, or maybe things that you have not considered, and say 6 months from now, you will not be the same person. So you will learn new things, and you'll look back and probably see a completely different perspective.
But also probably you can just obsess about one critical decision and be just torment yourself and everybody around you about this particular decision, especially if it didn't play out. What would happen if we would play this differently? Just endless torment.
I think this is where I would bring in my favorite quote from Annie Duke, who is ex-scientist turned into a professional poker player. There's a brilliant book called Thinking in Bets. Highly recommend to anybody who wants to learn anything about decision making. She basically says that I think overwhelming amount of people do not understand the difference between a good decision and a good result. Sometimes good result is actually just pure luck, or maybe some fortunate circumstances. So you can make the best, you can have the best decision making process, but still end up with a bad result because timing did not align or something else didn't happen. So she basically says you should do a retro, but you should not get hung up on the result, because there are always things that are outside of your control, and you have to be able to distinguish that.
And that's a very interesting question. How do we even do that? How do I know in my retro that what I'm looking at is really the results of my decision, or maybe it's just luck? And it's obviously very convenient to pin bad results on luck and not bad decisions.
I think this is where your level of objectivity really comes in, and your ability to separate things that you can control versus things that you cannot control. And this is where there is no trick. You just have to be objective with yourself. You gotta put a mirror in front of yourself and just really do the assessment. You cannot, this is where a lot of people fall into the victim mentality to say, oh, everything is against me, everything is happening to me. I've had this problem where I used to say, oh my God, this happened to me again, this happened to me. And fortunately, I had a coach who was able to coach me out of this and said, you know what, Olya, it's not happening to you, it's just happening. You just happen to be in these circumstances.
Yeah, but also it might be, it's not happening to you, you
it's
actually, no, but the other way around, you actually made it happen. because
That's
bad
true as well.
decisions.
That's true as well.
Yeah.
But this is where you really, like I said, this is where your level of self-consciousness and objectiveness comes in. And again, that's another muscle that you can train. It's a very hard one to train. Very hard one.
Exactly. Because we don't like to be the villains in our story.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And this like self-storytelling, there is a whole psychology of, it's called narrative psychology. It's a whole discipline that says that the most important story is the story that you tell yourself. You can literally rewrite neural connections in your brain by creating a different perspective on the events that already happened to you. So you can seriously like change your whole personality by just telling yourself a different story about your past.
And that's exactly why it's so hard to objectively judge your own decisions, because you don't want to admit that you did something wrong.
Exactly, it's like trying to override the code, you know?
No, and I recall a lot of my memories always being about, well, that happened because tons of other things that happened, and none of them was because I fucked up somewhere in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's the ability to take accountability, but also at the same time not being, I guess not taking too much accountability, just like not being the Holy Mary, like the one that like takes everybody's sins, you know? It's like just objectively, what was it that you could have done better? And objectively, what was really that was outside of your control? And I think a very easy scenario here is when you pitch to a VC fund, you know, as a founder. A lot of times when founders get rejected, they take it as a reflection of themselves. 90% of the time, they just didn't feed the VC thesis. This is it. They just didn't check the boxes. Doesn't mean that they're not a good founder or they don't have a good business. And this is where you really like, it's a conscious process. You have to ask yourself, was it really like, what could I have done better? And if I have done all those things better, would it have changed the outcome? Like 90% of the time, not.
It's interesting, and I also think it's a lot of personality involved, and maybe also like a lot of gender differences about how people reflect on the decisions that they make, all the way from I'm always right, whatever happened bad wasn't because of me, all the way to yes, it's all because of
all my fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think, interestingly enough, this is where like gender really comes in, and I think women do a lot more retrospective, and we're also a lot more prone to blaming ourselves, unfortunately. That's why I think there's a lot of gender disparity when it comes to, you know, executives and startups and all that.
And that's because it is required to have this thin skin and go like, yeah, I know better, instead of constantly thinking about what I did wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's also why women are actually better leaders. Mm-hmm. And the stat, I believe, goes that most of the sustainable business is actually led by women, because we're more open to receiving feedback, and we're also give feedback in a kinder way. So we don't traumatize our team members.
And once you pull yourself out of this mentality that it's all my fault, then actually you can do much better.
Exactly.
And it's an interesting question, what is easier to pull yourself out to? Is it all my fault, or I never do anything wrong?
Ooh, okay, yeah. I'll speak from my personal experience. I was obviously on the spectrum of everything is my fault, I'm a fuck up, etc. And this is just something I think that unfortunately I inherited from my childhood. And I think it was easier for me to pull myself out of that, because the perspective is better, you know? It's like, it's easier to stop blaming myself and say that actually I'm not that bad at what I do.
Because you start feeling actually better about yourself and not worse.
Exactly. So your bar is already set really low and you can go higher. Versus the egomaniacs
or narcissists that there's nothing wrong.
Exactly. It's hard for them, because then it means admitting that they actually did a lot of wrong things.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Olya, that was very, very interesting, and I learned a lot. I'm sure our audience learned a lot as well. Mm-hmm. And the podcast again, Decision Factory.
Yes.
Decision Factory. I'm going to subscribe for sure. I'm sure that a lot of our viewers will do.
Yours.
Yes, and obviously you can find this video, the Verbose mode by Taxcare, here at SHIP 2025. The last but definitely not the least interview, that was amazing. Stay tuned for more episodes of Verbose mode down the road. I think the next one will be in very end of September, beginning of October. So just subscribe to Verbose mode on Taxcare YouTube. Olya, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.